So I will go first with my 10 minutes. For my initial remarks, I've limited the topic to, there we go, grammar teaching and communicative teaching, a hybrid that works. That quotation, a hybrid that works, is something a teacher once said about the two types of teaching, and I thought it was a very apt description. The first thing I want to do is share with you a quotation written by one of students who was in an entrance exam, a placement exam for our intensive English program. And what the student wrote is, I want to explain that I know a lot of grammars, but is my problem I haven't enough vocabularies. I think it is just a wonderful quote. I have always liked it. And of course, I couldn't agree more that vocabulary is absolutely crucial, more crucial than grammar, I suppose, if you're going to put them in a hierarchy. But it also shows that perhaps there's a place for grammar too. And in its innocence, what this quote points out is that knowing a lot of grammar is not the point. The goal is not for our students to know a lot of grammar. The goal of grammar teaching is to help students create an interlanguage that is increasingly fluent and accurate in the use of English structures in meaningful communication. Notice I said interlanguage. Our teaching goal is not native speaker proficiency or mastery. That will happen long after the students leave our classes, if it happens at all, and for most students it doesn't. So the interlanguage is their important medium of achieving their goals in university study or their jobs. Notice I said increasingly fluent and accurate. Fluency is just as much a goal in grammar teaching as accuracy. Fluency and accuracy are two sides of the same coin. And sometimes I think it's good for us to remind ourselves that fluency does not mean the ability to speak pidgin really, really fast. And so the goal of grammar teaching is for our students to be able to communicate meaningfully in all skill areas. In other words, the goals of grammar teaching and the goals of communicative teaching are fundamentally the same. Now I want to show you another sample of student writing. This one will unfortunately look very familiar to those of you who teach Generation 1.5 students and shows some serious fossilized usage problems. And that's throughout the composition. I only have 10 minutes, so I could only give you one short sentence from it. The topic is, what should happen to teenagers who commit crimes? And the student has written, if the court sent a kid in adult prisons will get worse, not better, or this, I think the society or the court need to build a new jail for the juveniles that have doing crimes, and the court should treat them as adults, but only in court. This student immigrated to the United States at age 8, graduated from a U.S. high school with a diploma, and was enrolled in a U.S. college at the time this was written. That's 10 years in the U.S. school system. That's 10 years of comprehensible input, at least enough comprehensible input to earn a high school diploma. This student went to school during the time the naturalist movement in language teaching was assuring us that a second language is learned in the same way as a first language, and accuracy will just happen, which, as we all know by now, is at best a half-truth. Thank you. One of the greatest half-truths ever told, really. No matter how much theory you wrap it in, there are significant, obvious, observable differences between learning a second language as an adult and a first language as a child. And as we teachers know, accuracy does not always just happen. This particular student, I taught a number of Generation 1.5 students. The only thing that I would ever find would work would be a crash course in grammar, and even then, it was a very difficult situation to reverse. And when working with these students, I would always say to myself, boy, I wish I'd had you in my grammar class at a crucial stage in your interlanguage development. Then by comparison, I consistently observed that the second language students in my freshman English class, the writing class, the ones who had a good grounding in basic grammar, and I don't mean anything fancy. I mean, they can find a subject and a verb, that sort of thing, that they were much more likely to have the language skills expected at a university and be able to achieve, or have at least the opportunity to compete and succeed at the university. So when I would come to TESOL, and I would listen to speakers such as Stephen Krashen in particular and others who advocated zero grammar, were opposed to the direct teaching of grammar in any way whatsoever. I would always wonder if they were teaching the same students that I was teaching. If they had to Monday morning go to class and face the same students that I was going to face on Monday morning. I found it hard to imagine. I believed then, and I believe now, that those who advocated zero grammar were just simply wrong. And I wasn't alone. During the heyday of the naturalist bandwagon in the 80s and the 90s, the number of teachers actually using grammar-based materials was increasing dramatically, exponentially. There was a real disconnect someplace in our field. But not only were large numbers of teachers supporting grammar teaching, there was, and it was sometimes hard to find it, but there was a steady stream of research throughout the 80s and the 90s to this day that shows that grammar teaching works. In my reading of the research literature, much of the academic community today seems generally in agreement that students in second language programs that include both grammar teaching and communicative teaching show accelerated learning and substantial gains in usage ability compared to students in programs that provide only communicative exposure to target structures. Or to say it more simply, much of the research shows that if you combine grammar teaching and communicative teaching, the students learn faster and better. There's always conflicting research and theory, as it should be in any academic field of inquiry. And we still have we're just at the beginning of understanding how second languages are acquired, or first languages for that matter. No one has all the answers, and people who do say they have the answers make me very grumpy. And I will admit I do not have all the answers. I'll let them speak for themselves. But if you're interested in exploring a survey of some of the recent research literature in grammar teaching, I think a good place to start would be an article by Hossein Nasaji and Sandra Fotos. You can find the citation and the information about the article on my website, or copy it down here. My website is azargrammar, it's not hard to remember.com. Somehow, for a while in our field, the term communicative language teaching got more or less, this is how I viewed it, the term communicative language teaching got co-opted by the naturalist movement and came to mean that if you engaged in communicative language teaching, that meant you could not engage in explicit grammar teaching. But that is simply not true, and it never has been. Grammar teaching can be integrated into a communicative framework or a skill-based curriculum. Communicative methods and materials can be integrated into grammar-based teaching. There are a number of good ways of integrating the two. So the final thought I want to leave with you is this. Communicative teaching and grammar teaching are not mutually exclusive. They are mutually supportive. They fit hand in glove. They are, as I said, what one teacher calls a hybrid that works. Thank you.